And so the second detail is that, okay, you could say, well, great, we have a timeline for reforms. What's so special about that? Well, the second detail is that the compacts have been signed by heads of state. And so in terms of commitment, it doesn't get any more meaningful than this. And the third detail is that there's a quarterly reporting and tracking of progress on these compacts. And the presidencies of the first 12 countries who presented their compacts in DAR not too long ago are really committed and have already started in tracking progress on each and every one of these reforms. So that's what's special about the M300. Now, what is so important when it comes to DRE? The important part of the M300 and the compacts is that DRE in almost all of the 12 first cohort countries has a very important role to play, because unlike grid electrification, it's the one way, it's a much faster and more efficient way to electrify the most vulnerable and most rural communities. Now, if you have had a look at the compact countries, not all of them give the same importance to DRE, but what's going to be interesting is that to see over the next couple of months, the adjustments that will be done, especially in the countries that have not given a big space to DREs, because they will very quickly notice that they will have to realign their strategies towards heavy investments and stronger focus on DRE. So this is something that will be interesting to watch, the strategic adjustments and the quarterly reporting. Now, that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say, and I think I'm going to end it there, is we all have the habit, especially the UN organizations and including the World Bank, to when there's a new challenge to show off all our great experiences and successes within that realm. But I think it's really important to not forget that the M300 agenda and the scale-up of DRE will continue to be a lot of trial and error. So we need very efficient feedback cycles to not keep making the same mistakes all over again, and to not only focus on what has worked, but also to be very open about what we know has not worked. And if there's anything that I'm really counting on Elizabeth and Mohammed, who will present the view from Uganda and Nigeria, is to also learn from what they have established doesn't work and what we have to do differently. Because I think there are hardly any countries, I mean, there are few countries like Uganda and Nigeria that have done copious trial and error and have copious lessons learned, and really are piloting today, especially in the DRE realm, a couple of really interesting innovations. But again, I think it's important not only to do our usual belly dance and show off our innovations, but also to be very open about what we have established does not work and what are the mistakes that we have made in the past, because there's only one way to accelerate our learning, and that is to be honest about our past mistakes. Thanks a lot, and yeah, I'll enjoy the show from right over there. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jan. Let us now turn to Uganda, a country that has made notable strides in scaling decentralized energy solutions. I'd like to invite Elizabeth Kejuka Okwenje, Principal Energy Officer of Uganda's Renewable Energy Department, to share a brief overview of Uganda's DRE market landscape.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I had a presentation, but if it's not coming up, I'll just read it. So, yes, what's the market status? As you all know, in Uganda, the off-grid rate is at about 38% out of 60. So the market is growing. Oh, here we are. Yes, so the market is really experiencing growth, and this is driven by several factors. Of course, the government, there's an electricity access scale-up project, which is aiming to have at least 1 million connections to households, businesses, and public institutions. We also have the private sector who are critical. In the off-grid space, we have, it's an open market, it's unregulated, so we have solar home systems, lanterns, etc., all those standalone appliances. We also have mini-grids where we're trying to bring in private sector participation in scaling those up. Then, of course, we have the international collaborations, like the M300 Mission 300, that's an opportunity. We have several collaborations with development partners, which have helped, especially for mini-grids. We've had the EU and the German government really support us through different projects. So we really need to get this universal access by 2030, according to the National Electrification Strategy. We need off-grid is very much part of this, or decentralized renewable energy is very much part of it. So what are the business models? You have the usual pay-as-you-go, which has been really successful because it has low entry costs for customers and they pay incrementally. We have obviously the solar home systems. These are plug and play, which are sold usually small capacities just for households. Then you have the mini grid model or microgrids, where you have a localized grid, which is powered by solar or hybrid power, and it provides electricity to communities or clusters. Then you have the leasing and asset financing. The customers lease the energy systems to purchase and own later. Then you have the public-private partnerships. So this is where we partner with private firms, as I mentioned, for underserved areas for off-grid technologies. I mentioned the mini-grids. So we've had the PPP model for mini-grids, where we've had development partners provide a subsidy for the capex costs, and then government provides an in-kind subsidy for the distribution network and connections, and then the private sector raises capital, some debt and equity to close finance. So that's the PPP model that we're trying to scale up through a project called Get Access. Then of course the PUE model, which is mostly focused on agriculture, because that's the most, in the rural areas, is the most active sector. And then we have franchises and agencies. So that's how the DRE sector has thrived through all these different models. And finally, what is the enabling environment? We have an isolated grid systems regulations by the Electricity Regulatory Authority. These provide guidelines for the mini-grids, like I said. They provide a license exemption, which has technical standards, and it's streamlined. There's an approval process, and there's a framework which encourages private sector participation and has operational guidelines. So those regulations are in place for mini-grids. We also have a renewable energy feed-in tariff, the guidelines. So that program has standardized pricing on the tariff for renewable energy projects, sources. Then we have PPPs, like I mentioned earlier. Those are also for mini-grids, like I said. And then most recently, we have the net metering regulations. This allows consumers to generate their own electricity and feed the surplus back to the grid. So that's the environment. I thank you.
Thank you. So we are now going to move to Nigeria, where efforts to expand energy access are increasingly tied to unlocking productivity and rural demand. Please welcome Mohammed Jibril, lead for the Energizing Agriculture Program at the Rural Electrification Agency of Nigeria, and after which you may join us on the stage for the next panel discussion.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I think I could pick out so many similarities from the Ugandan case study. We have similar markets, and most of these models are replicable, and we've seen them play within different communities. To understand Nigeria and the context better, I think we have to start from the big elephant in the room. Nigeria is about over 200 million people, and over 35% equivalent to, well, we could say 80 to 85 million Nigerians are without access. That's a big problem. A lot of people see it as a developmental challenge. To others, it's like a market opportunity because You're talking about a lot of communities within different states. If you want to be in a place where you have a wind or a hydro or whatever technology you want to improve access, there is that community in Nigeria for you to invest in. If you are into solar, there's that irradiation within the country and so on. I think to solve that problem, that's where Rural Electrification Agency comes into play. The major responsibility for the REA is ensuring that that wide gap of people without access is shortened every day. How do we do that? We have seen within the past few years, and before that, government usually would want to just take an EPC approach, for example. How much would it cost to set up a mini grid in this community? How much would it cost to expand the national grid to this community? Some places are easy. You could just put some transformers and extend the national grid, put them down, bring a distribution company on the grid side to take over. But then, is that community economically viable for companies to invest in? And that's why the government realized we could be setting up these mini grids, but they would not be sustainable. So we have to bring in the private sector to play with us. We've seen how mini grids work, and productive communities with hundreds of households, with so many farming activities are a good example of where a mini grid would be successful. And we've done so many hundreds of them, and we've seen that they work. But then we go to communities that may not be really attractive to a mini grid company. And some of them, we recommend the solar home systems where you could get the barest level access that the community needs to thrive while you're monitoring the productivity. And at some point when the aggregation becomes bigger, you then tend to bring that mini grid into the foray. How has REA evolved over the past years? I think REA understood that it might not be the utility that provides the electricity, but it could be the enabler that brings that facilitation, bring the development partners into the fold, understand how to utilize government finances to de-risk solutions, and also bring in private developers to come into the foray and take up, not just bringing equity and debt like my colleague here said. It's about taking the responsibility of operating and maintaining and being that energy provider for that community for as long as possible. Again, and maybe this are some of the differences that we have with some neighboring countries. In 2023, the Nigerian Electricity Act was passed, and that was a milestone in the energy evolution in Nigeria, where the role of government was decentralized, and state governments are now able to make some of these rules and guide the investment in energy within their states and support DRE deployment within states, and that has eased that control that the federal government has at the top. At the end of the day, and in summary, there are challenges. One of such challenges is financing local entrepreneurs. It's been a problem for us. How do we expand productive use has also been a problem, because it's one thing just taking electricity to a community, but it's ensuring that that electricity is used productively and people are better for it. And then the third one is ensuring affordability. We all know how many grid electricity costs compared to grid electricity in some places, and how do we ensure that these subsidies and these grants come in and reduce this tariff at the end of the day for the end users in these last mile communities. But despite all of these challenges, I think our biggest exports to the rest of Africa and other countries are blended finance that we've tried and tested and has worked for us. One of them is the performance-based grants, where developers, that's mini grid companies, are encouraged to show some hard work before they are repaid. So find that community, get your investment, get your monies, invest in that community, set up these connections, and then come back to us to give you the grant. That has showed that we are not just risking just bringing developers into the foray. The second one is the public-private partnerships that my colleague from Uganda spoke about, which is government understanding the little that they need to do, de-risking the space, but also bringing in somebody to take over the entire operation. That shows that sustainability is being thought after. And then the last one is decentralizing that regulation and ensuring that state governments and regional governments also have some grind in the game. With that, I would say thank you for the opportunity, and I'll take my seat.
We're now going to move on to the panel discussion. I'd like to invite our remaining two panelists to the stage, Laura Corcoran, COO of AppTech Africa, and Yanis Hotz-Eagle, COO of Enensis. Please come and take your seats. So first of all, thank you for joining us today. This is, I hope, it's going to be an exciting discussion post-lunch. The way I'm going to do this is, so thank you, Fiona, also for joining us on stage. So I'm going to ask a quick round of some individual questions first, and then kind of spend a little bit of time reflecting on what was shared. So my first question is actually to Mohammed. In Nigeria, your work is focused on energizing agriculture, productive use, so an area that's not just about energy access, right? Could you walk us through some of the financing strategies that have worked well in unlocking these types of DRE investments? And how do you see the private sector's role evolving in scaling these efforts? I know you've touched a little bit about this, but just for our panel discussion right now.
Thank you. I think I'll take us back again to the performance-based grants and the output-based funds. And I'll throw in another one, which is the minimum subsidy tender. I think these financing mechanisms have showed so much promise. We had implemented a World Bank and an African Development Bank facility in the past years. We called it the Nigerian Electrification Project. And it was, I think, a joint $550 million facility that has focused majorly on supporting the private sector in unlocking these opportunities. The performance-based grants is one of them. Developers, and by developers I always mean mini-grid companies in Nigeria, so they go and find the communities themselves. We try to avoid having to dictate where they go to. If you pick out of this 85 million, however they are, wherever they are, and you feel like there's the market for it, I think we should be able to support it. So they go and identify these communities. They set up a stakeholder engagement process between them and the community without government interfering at first. And they get their equities from commercial banks, from investment lenders, loans, whatever it is, and set up these mini grids. As soon as they set up these mini grids, they come back to us, and based on the connections that they have established, we get to give them a one-off grant. I know this seems like a simple transaction, but for us, it solves so many problems. It solves the problem of a developer coming back to say to the Nigerian government that you prescribed this community to me. I've gone to that community. This people are not off-taking this energy, and I'm left with so much without anything to do with it. It could also be this community is not productive. They just lighting bulbs and that's all. So there's nothing productive that makes them more economically viable to even afford the electricity. It also ensures that we hold them accountable. So any company that is able to raise funding to go to communities, engage with them, convince them to need electricity, and set up these mini grids should deserve some de-risking, and that's what the performance-based grants does. For communities that we feel may not be a good model for a mini grid, we do the solar home systems. So there are small systems, tiers from 50 watts to large tiers that satisfy the local need. And again, developers go and we set up milestones for them. So you come back after a certain milestone and we give you some incentive, and on it goes. That has also been, I think it was even the most successful amongst all the components, because we're able to disburse all the funding halfway into the project. The last one is the MSD, and I know there are a lot of questions around, so what happens to communities that developers don't find attractive, or they don't have anybody that speaks to them. So we pick out these communities, we audit them, we do the survey, we do the community engagement, we put them on a tender, and we invite companies to come and bid for them. But in bidding, you would tell us how you want to stimulate that local demand for electricity in that community. It could be by injecting productive users to the community. It could be by supporting small and medium scale enterprises by ensuring that you target them with the electricity and so on. But I think this blended financing has helped us in understanding the market. It has helped us in expanding access, and it is something that the DREs now, which is the distributed access through renewable energy scale-up, is focusing on expanding this mandate of the NEB, scaling up all these tested solutions, and yeah, happy to talk further later. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot of different types of financing strategies and mechanisms. But what's interesting to hear about is that you've really gone the distance in kind of testing a lot of these models, and so you've got a lot of sort of data coming back from it now as to what works. I'm going to turn to Laura next, and you've worked across multiple markets in the continent, and I'm wondering, what have you seen as the most catalytic financing tools, and are there trends that you think are emerging now that could reshape how projects are funded at scale?
Thanks so much. Yes, so the funding mechanisms that we've seen, first of all, we see a lot of grants and concessional financing, especially in early stages of projects and with companies. And we see a lot with impact investors, more and more coming into the sector. So investors who are interested in what is the impact of your company, who's affected, how are they affected. In addition, and this is not in my company's sector, but in the solar home system sector, microfinance is another financing mechanism that's there. People can go and get a microfinance loan, and they can work together with these solar home system companies. And then we're seeing more venture capitalism for startups, equity investors from that side. As far as trends, everything I'm seeing is we're going to have more RBF, just like you stated earlier, and more blended finance that's going to be scaled and help to de-risking. Just a couple thoughts on that. So the problem's big. We've been here for years discussing it. there needs to be bigger changes than what we're doing now, because the number of people who don't have access to electricity is actually starting to grow instead of decrease because we're not reacting enough in time. So as we look at RBFs, I represent an African private sector company, and we have been able to raise finance. It's hard to do, it's extremely time consuming. When you implement the RBF models, that means that the private sector then needs to pre-finance what it's doing. And that's like, getting finance is extremely difficult, especially for local companies, especially for African companies. So I just want to, I'd love to know if measures are being taken to make sure that the funding, this massive amount of funding that's available, is going to actually reach African companies on the ground. Or is this just another hurdle where they can't get the pre-financing, they can't participate, and they can't, you know, they're not part of it. All the funding is going to international companies. So I'd love to know more about that. And then the other thing I would like to say is that as companies here in Africa are getting financing for these projects, where are the interest rates that are the same as in the global north for green infrastructure? The interest rates we have here in the global south are so much higher. They should be the same. We are serving people who don't have a lot of money. Those interest rates should be the same. So that's what I wish I would see with the finance mechanisms.
Thanks. And maybe later when we open it up to the audience, we can get some takes on that, right? So I'm really enjoying hearing the perspectives from government, from private sector. I'm going to turn to Fiona from Waterworks. Waterworks is deeply rooted in linking energy to livelihoods, especially through your solar pumping. And I'm wondering, in your view, what policy or market conditions have enabled your work to grow and to scale? And what can other countries take away from your experience when it comes to productive use DRE solutions?
Thank you very much for that question. Allow me to introduce W Waterworks briefly. We're a solar water engineering company. We supply and we do maintenance, installation of solar water pumping systems, and we also purify water and do borehole services. We've been in existence for the past 10 years. So some of the policies that I've come across so far, I have some reference to. In Uganda, basically, several policies have and regulatory elements have been have played a crucial role in enabling the growth of solar water pumping systems, like VAT and import duty exemptions. The VAT for the solar panels is okay, but then there's still work to be done for the pumping system, for the pumps. Yeah, there's still tax for pumping system for the pumps in Uganda, and I think the inconsistent implementation of is still a challenge. Yeah, and there needs to be a clear maybe enforcement and mechanisms for the import. Yeah, and then product quality standards for the imports, which is enforced by UNBS, which sees to it that the products that are imported into the country of good quality. Yeah. For example, we deal with the products. We get our products, our pumps from Italy, which are good quality. Yes. So the UNBS has seen to it that the products that are coming in are of good quality. Yeah. And also the inclusion into rural electrification strategy and plan, the Rural Electrification Agency, and electricity access scale-up projects recognize solar for productive use, especially in agriculture, which has opened doors for DR players like us, yeah, and has enabled us to engage with government in initiatives focused on increasing irrigation and resilience through renewable energy. Another thing would be collaboration with local government and agriculture extension services, which with support from the district level agriculture offices and cooperatives, has improved the outreach and the farmer training and has accelerated adoption for practices of use of these products like solar and for the solar products. And then, that's about it. And also collaboration with the local government, and agriculture extensive services. Sorry. Yeah, that's just about it.
Thank you. And I love hearing about collaboration, because I think even on this panel, we're hearing very diverse and different perspectives and insights. And to your point, the collaboration and how we can really pull all these threads together is really important. I'm going to turn to Yanis and just ask, from your experience with Inensis having a pretty unique vantage point across Africa and Asia as well, when it comes to mini-grid growth and scale up. So from your experience, what makes a mini-grid business model not only bankable, but also sustainable? And are there any regulatory enablers that have consistently helped to de-risk these projects from your perspective?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. My name is Yanis. I'm working with a renewable energy consulting firm called Inensis. And if I was able to answer this first part of the question to 100% satisfaction, I think we would not be here, but busy implementing, and we would be done. Of course, many of us are working on making mini-grid projects bankable. Our company has developed several innovations and concepts in the sector to try and improve bankability. One of them is the concept of rural industrialization. So basically, it's a concept where the mini-grid developer not only focuses on selling electricity, but where they also actively get involved in agro-processing. And we're trying this out in a mini-grid in Uganda at the moment, where we're actually drying vanilla and also, drying chili and growing vanilla. When you come to the exhibition booth, you can also visit our site virtually. But as also the colleague from Nigeria has said, and I think Jan also mentioned this, we need to continue innovating. I think we cannot be satisfied necessarily with a status quo, but need to continue seeking different types of solutions and not just simply scale up what we have. In terms of the policy and regulatory aspect, that's also something our company works on almost on a daily basis. We're very lucky to have collaborated with the African Forum for Utility Regulators through GetTransform to develop a tool, mini-grid regulatory tool, that allows countries to implement mini-grid regulation that is tailored to their context. I think a mistake that has been made in the past is to simply copy-paste regulation from one country to the next. In fact, what we have seen, what is very important is that mini-grid regulation should always be extremely tailored towards the country context that you're working in. A country like Ethiopia, which is very public sector driven, cannot have the same regulation as a country like Nigeria. And therefore, this tool that we have developed guides the user through a series of questions. And then after answering the questions, you get a mini-grid regulation text that is basically already a little bit tailored to your context, but then you then still need to adjust moving forward. I think also we have seen some good ideas on mini-grid regulation and policy from Nigeria. In the NEP program, for example, there was a portal that was developed which allowed developers to apply at the same time for financing and for permits at the same time. So it's almost like a one-stop shop, mini-grid regulation one-stop shop, and where you don't have to go through different hurdles and different steps to first of all get the financing and then get the permits. So combining this would be an idea again that can improve on time it takes to get licenses. Yeah, I will also stop there and then looking forward to further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to step back a little bit, and we've heard all these different perspectives from different stages and sort of, aspects of the work. I wanted to ask what you see as the most persistent barriers to scaling DRE. And I'm kind of jumping on building off on this trend of like, we really need to understand what the specific contexts are in different markets. But there has to be a common thread that we can also kind of learn from. And so I'm going to ask this question of what is this persistent barrier that you see? And I'm also curious to know how it's showing up in all of your work as well. And this is kind of open to all of you, or maybe one by one as well.
Finance, one. But two, there's also, there's some technology barriers, making sure that you have access to regulated products, to products that are of quality, with suppliers that honor their warranty, that are going to work for 10, 20 years, right? So technology is another challenge. And then third is technical capacity. So at our company, we spend a lot of time training, because this is a fast evolving industry and there's new technology and you want to stay on top of it. But going in and then pulling out is not going to work. You have to have a sustainable element of a team on the ground, and they have to technically know how to manage these projects and these systems. And so capacity building and training and yeah. But finance.
I would take a stab at this and say, I think it's always difficult speaking as government and in the middle of private sector. But yes, I think we're in a world where for a government, we want to see the market evolve such that it functions even without government participating in it on a day-to-day. Government can take care of the regulatory aspects, like my colleague from INANSA said, just ensuring that bottlenecks are reduced and there are no hurdles wherever you go, processes are shortened. But also, we want to see that energy access is everywhere. If you're bringing private sector, you are telling them to take over the entire thing, and you're taking a step backward and you're just enabling. So you're providing grant, for example, because you're sending companies to places that are logically not viable. If you are to bring a private company and ask him to choose between setting up a business in a market in Kampala versus going to a rural community where you have to do community engagement. You have to convince them to need electricity. You have to convince them to stop using firewood for cooking. You have to convince them to pay. That's the biggest challenge for this electricity. I've been to communities where I'm told, look, we've lived here for more than 100 years and we don't need this. Yes, not to spoil the narrative, but you have to work hard to stimulate the demand in these communities, which means if you are sending companies that are practically wanting to be profitable, you have to put an incentive. By putting incentive every day, you're also making the market become a bit lazy. This could be a dissenting opinion, but we are trying to let the market evolve, but we are also trying to push the market to an acceptable level where it could pick up by itself. So I think the challenge for us is to how do we make sure that government comes in, bring in development partners like the World Bank and the AFDBs and the Mission 300s and all of these efforts in ensuring that electricity access is everywhere. We're sending private sector to take up these good models where they are operating, they are maintaining on a day-to-day, they're taking care of these grids, they are doing this amazing customer service with communities. But at the end of the day, how do we make sure it is affordable to these communities? I think that's the biggest challenge. When you want it to be a purely business approach, then you're allowing these businesses to go and talk and charge these tariffs. But you also, if you also take a step backward, then you're realizing that these people in these communities cannot afford these tariffs for them. So I think the challenge that we are seeing on a day-to-day is having this balance between the roles that government and private sector are playing, what community, how the community comes in, how they're able to take care of this infrastructure, how sustainable all of this are. I know this is more like a hurdle, but sorry, like a puzzle, but I think as government, we tend to think everywhere and we tend to bring all of this together. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day, we could have some amazing leads on how to solve this. Thank you. Somebody else?
Okay. Yeah, maybe just one or two sentences on this. So the aspect of finance and building capacity, again, our company is fortunate enough to work with GetInvest, so we're one of the advisory teams. I believe there are a total of 8 advisory teams that are working together with GetInvest on a finance readiness support program. And this program seeks to address exactly those challenges, building capacity within especially local companies in Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean region to receive investment. But we are seeing the same challenge even in that program, which is that very often financiers are telling us that the companies we are supporting do not have sufficient revenue in order to receive investment, or they're not yet profitable enough. But in order to get there, they would need investment. So who is that investor that is basically pushing them through the valley of death, right, to the other side? I don't have an answer to that, unfortunately, but I think this is an important question that should be addressed.
Thank you once again. Maybe another, sorry. I think pay-as-you-go also helps with these issues. If the farmers are allowed to pay, if there are farmers that cannot afford maybe the high prices of the panels or the pumps, introducing pay-as-you-go plan enables them to afford these services. Because maybe if there's tax issues with some of the products like the pumps, it would be better for them to do a pay-as-you-go, because the people supplying the pumps would also want to get enough profits, and they would not just want to let the farmers not to be able to afford because of the taxes. So pay-as-you-go enables the farmers to also afford the services. We'll give them maybe a period of 12 to 24 months to pay up. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of different perspectives here as usual, but there are things that are familiar, like financing, capacity, technology. Really appreciate the point on, you know, government's role in trying to balance between community needs and also private sector coming in to thrive, to have, you know, to create a thriving ecosystem. And then as well as definitely bringing up some pre-investment problems. And then what I'm hearing from Fiona is also really, you know, building local businesses that really are catered to affordability and the capacity of communities as well. And so these are kind of the things that I'm hearing. I want to open it up to the audience. I think we have a bit of time for some questions. In the meantime, though, I would like the panelists to also kind of think of, you know, your final thoughts to leave us with for this session. You know, whether those be sort of shared common factors, success factors for scaling or things like that. So I'm going to open it up to the floor now. I don't know if we actually have microphones, but we don't have too many people in the room, so maybe, and I can also share my microphone here. If you're asking your question, please share your name and where you're from as well. Okay, I'll come over here first.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yazid Yabo. I'm the technical assistant to the Africa Mini Grid Projects Nigeria. I also work with REA as well. I'm not asking a question, but I'm suggesting a solution. Like Laura did mention, we need to do more in the financing side. And I think we need to incorporate more innovative solutions. And one thing I notice is a lot of DRE projects do not include renewable energy certificates in their financing. I know this is a very touchy topic because a lot of people are not familiar with it, but there is an opportunity to use DRE for financing DRE projects. To use RECs for financing DRE projects. I know RECs are being built mostly in the operational side of the DRE, where developers can get additional income in their projects. But I think there is an opportunity to kind of aggregate projects. For example, maybe the government or any developer can aggregate renewable energy, DRE projects, and then sell the RECs in the futures market, right? And then use that financing, use that money to finance renewable energy projects, right? Which you can kind of include a government or maybe a DFI as a guarantor for those RECs in case those projects are not able to be constructed, right? So I think there's an opportunity for DRE projects to take advantage of renewable energy certificates. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, one more question over on this side.
Thank you very much. My name is Geoffrey Okosi-Oga from Tororo, Uganda. Tororo is the eastern side of Uganda. I'm a renewable
the narrative has already changed quite significantly over the last 15 years. Yes, we still are facing the same number of people without electricity, but at least the fundamentals are there now. We have the technical solutions, you know, whether that's mini-grids, mesh grids, solar home systems, integrated with digital payment mechanisms and so on. We have in the vast majority of countries now policy and regulation in place to govern this sector. And so all that's really left to do is to implement, right? And this is where we need the finance and so on. But so that's where I see hope, because we basically just need to execute and then not have this conference anymore in 15 years from now. Okay, you're laughing. I guess we will still be sitting here. Let's hope not. But yeah, I just want to say again also that, as I mentioned earlier, there is no one-size-fits-all solutions, but we need to continue innovating and adapting to local circumstances. But yeah, I hope that we will now be able to execute and implement. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of that. And just a note on Rex, I think, yeah, absolutely. That's an opportunity that we should be looking at. A lot of the companies I've spoken to, like locally, they're still not familiar with it, they're not comfortable with it, and going through the application process to access them is something that we're not quite at yet. But we need to support the sector to get there, because I think that's a really good point. Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I think if we want to end on a positive note, you know, this is solvable. We have the bank in the room, we've got the government in the room, we've got private sector in the room. So if we all just work together, we could come up with some really great solutions to this. And we've got a lot of really great local companies right here in Uganda who can provide the solutions to these energy challenges that we're facing. So let's do it.
I think it's easy to come after the two of them with so much optimism. I share, I think, the enthusiasm from the speakers at the audience. I understand when you see trees being chopped, or when you see that we've been doing the same RBF over and over and over again, and you think, couldn't there be something better? Can't we do something better? But I think, like the two speakers before me said, we are doing something, and we just need to keep doing it, but we need everybody to do this. Last year in Lagos, at this very event, some companies in Nigeria came and signed MOUs with REA. In the past, we were looking at mini grids as small as 50 kilowatt, 100, sometimes a bit more. But now companies are evolving from just being companies to service companies that are looking at the entire ecosystem. They're building large portfolios of projects. They know that the funding is somewhere. You just have to reach out to get it. Of course, it's not going to be an easy thing to just plug and just take it. There's so many checklists, there's so many regulations for you to access them, but the funding is there, and it is up to us, these private companies, to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes. If this regulation is there, it's there for a reason. As long as there's the political will and there's that funding out there, the DREs in Nigeria is about $750 million. In the past, when we were implementing the Nigerian electrification project, there were so many questions around why are you giving grants in Naira equivalent? The Naira is taking a tumble, and we are buying this produce, the products in dollars. Why wouldn't you give us grant in dollars? There were questions around why are you giving us this equivalent, not that equivalent. But I think we took all of that feedback from the same mini-grid developers that have been within the space, and we came back with a scale-up project. We almost doubled the grant that is available. We allowed them to build large portfolios of projects to come and sign a memorandum of understanding with the government and get this funding to do it. So I think we are running short of excuses, to be honest. We just need to come together, the private sector. For projects to be viable, you need productive users as well. Go to these communities, understand their needs, understand their problems, put up systems that would last the ages and would be sustainable. And I think at the end of the day, we would all be optimistic. Of course, it's alarming to see that with all of this money is going in, population rise is not giving up as well. So it's as if we're not doing anything at all, but believe me, there's a lot of things in the pipeline, and we need everybody to be with us to get to the promised land. Thank you.
For the gentleman that was talking about the misuse of of nature, maybe would help the farmers by introducing the service bundle financing, bringing maybe a whole package, mostly in the rural areas where people are still not so, like in the rural areas, people are not properly adapting to the new technologies. Maybe we introduce the panels and train them, and yeah, we introduce the panels and train the farmers so they can easily adopt. They can easily adopt to this new technology and new way of life. Yeah.
Okay. So we've come to the end of our session. And I think, everyone's heard it here today that we have a very solvable problem, and everybody in the room kind of knows the problems, knows the solutions as well. But what I'm hearing from our panelists is that it's really time for us all to come together and to listen to each other better, to really, come together to put the solutions that work. And it's time to change things. And I think I just wanted to leave you with, I think, something that Jan said earlier when he gave us his scene setting presentation, that is, we all kind of know what doesn't work and what works. And I think asking ourselves that question more of what doesn't work so that we can come up with what does work is just as important. And we don't ask ourselves that enough, and we're always talking about what does work, but I think coming up with the solutions also means asking those very difficult questions. Please join me in putting your hands together for our panelists today. Thank you so much for having this discussion. And I encourage you to, continue asking questions to the panelists after this if you want. I have one final announcement, that our coffee break is happening at the exhibition tent downstairs. So I'm hoping that's where everybody's going to head after this. Thank you so much for having us today, and enjoy the rest of your day and the conference.